Right. Good evening, everyone. Uncle Fester here. All right. Yeah, tonight we said we'd come on and we'd do a podcast. So I'm bringing some special guests on tonight. All right. And it actually rips me apart what we're gonna talk about tonight. We've got a gentleman who's been pursued by the CMS who's still serving in the Royal Air Force. And then we've got a veteran, a lady, a young lady, all right, 4 years in. I believe she's 22 years of age. So we got Steve. Steve, unfortunately, you will not see his face, and because he can't show his face because he's still serving. All right. Justine, she's a veteran who's been let down by our government. She's a veteran who's been let down by the charities, and the RAF. You know, we've got an individual here who was willing to give her life. She potentially has, because they've left her damaged. So we're going to talk to Justine. We're going to talk to Steve, and we're going to see what really is going on here. Everybody, I called Johnny Mercer out on the weekend. A lot of people seen it. He said enough is enough. Johnny, enough is enough. But why? And we got people serving. You're going to listen to this, Johnny. All right, and any other members of Parliament out there, because you continue to avoid this, it's not going away. I'm going to bring Bully Beefcake on. All right, see how he is. Bully Beef, how are you, son?
Bloody marvellous, sir. Buenos dias, buenas noches.
I love you, son. I love you.
I love you too, man.
I tell you. I tell you what, man, I'm a bit saddened tonight, actually, to be honest with you.
Shocking.
Should we bring Mr. House on? Graham House, Justice for Troops.
Indeed we shall.
And he's got a special guest, Justine. Very, very. That's good, that is. So we bring him on. Oh, I brought the wrong person on. I brought Steve on, look. So, hiya, Graham, how are you?
Evening, gentlemen. This is Justine.
Justine, how are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks.
Not bad. So, for those of you who can't remember Graham is a wing commander. All right, he used to be a wing commander. Now he's got Justice for Troops. Now he's getting into it because he realised how people are being let down. All right, and we're gonna let Justine talk in a bit, but we're gonna bring Steve in as well. And Justine, while you're on, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? Give people an understanding of who you are and what you've done and where you are today.
Yeah, so I joined the Royal Air Force back in November 2016 as a nurse, and during doing phase 1 training, I was injured whilst we were preparing to go on exercise, didn't receive adequate follow-up care, and inevitably after medical negligence in September 2018, I was medically discharged on crutches, didn't have adequate handover to the NHS, wouldn't release my medical records, which has inevitably affected any sort of follow-up care. There was, no duty of care whatsoever. And yeah, was just kind of left to it. Wasn't offered any support.
Justine, are you still on crutches today?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. How long have you been on crutches now?
That's about 4.5 years.
And what happens at night sometimes?
Oh, I get hellish flare-ups. I've been diagnosed with complex regional pain syndrome, which is, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Like it's hellish pain. I will have to be getting a spinal operation to get a neuromodulation device fitted into my spinal cord. And
how does this affect your relationships?
Massively, I think, especially because there's not just there's physical consequential injuries, like because I'm unstable because my knee can't support me. I've broken my wrist. I had to get reconstructive surgery on that. Metal work. I'm going to have to get another surgery done on it. I don't have adequate use of my hand, which only has come about as a direct impact from my knee, let alone the consequential mental injury as well.
So when we met, if you don't mind, just sorry, Fester, when we met, what did you tell me that you needed out of this journey? What did you need?
Help.
And what did you want?
Help.
But in terms of looking forward for others?
The thing that was very concerning about it all was that I wasn't just this random one that slipped through the net. Like it's widespread. And the fact that they can't give any accountability. When I first was going through the medical discharge process and came back up north, I was advised by the staff within the medical centre at RAF Halton to put in an Armed Forces Compensation Scheme application, and it was pretty black and white. There was no grey area. I was injured on duty.
Yeah.
There was no sort of reason why you could say it was black and white. And when I put the application in, they rejected it, denied it, wouldn't take anything to do with it. And it's draining enough as it is to go through these sorts of processes, let alone when you're not well, you can't look after yourself, you're in chronic pain. You've gone not just from the transition of a military to civilian without support. I've gone from joining up as an extremely athletic 18-year-old with, world at my feet to get on and off a chair without support.
So, here's a quick question for you before I move on to Steve, because I'm going to bring Steve on as well. Steve he's serving, and he ain't getting support either now. And this is really I get annoyed by this, because have you thought about taking your life, mental health wise? Has it affected you mentally?
Oh, big time, yeah.
So, and you didn't get you didn't get no support for that either. How many times have you looked at your tablets and thought, I could end it all now, I've had enough, it's pointless going on? How many times have you had that in your mind?
Yeah, and the concerning part of it is that you're getting thrown this medication at you left, right, and centre, and nobody's really taking any notice of it as well. And any time I had reached out for support, I was completely and utterly just thrown back under the rug. And there was, like, when I first got the rejection from the Armed Forces Compensation Scheme, and I just thought, stuff this, put it away for about a year. Throughout that year, after being medically discharged, it got worse and worse and worse. And I just thought, I can't go on like this, and I can't let them get away with this either. And I went to my local Citizens Advice Bureau and spoke to a wonderful lady from ASAP who just so happened to know Graham, and it was just like a matter of fate, really.
Yeah.
And if that hadn't have happened, God knows where I would be.
Have we been helpful?
Yeah, definitely.
Are we charging you for this?
No.
Brilliant, Graham. I agree with what you saying. Independent advisory. All right, board. We need it. But I'm going to bring on Steve. Justine, we're going to come back and forth. We're going to have, this is going to be like a little fire, and Steve may ask you some questions, and I want Steve to involve and get asked questions as well, because what you're going to learn is Steve's got 2 children. Steve has probably been to dark places, and Steve has done over 15 years. Actually, he's done slightly more than that. All right. So Steve's coming on. He's blacked out for a reason, because he's still serving, and we can't allow people to know. But Graham's already spoke to him, so we're going to get Graham to confirm who he is. So I'm going to bring Steve on, and Steve hasn't. We're going to talk to Steve, and what we're going to establish is there's major problems within the actual armed services as well. So, Steve, how are you, buddy?
Hey up, fellas, how you doing?
How are you, buddy? I tell you what, Steve, thank you very much, mate, for coming on, firstly. All right, because for those people out there, Steve's blacked out, all right, because he can't show his face. He's serving still, but he wants to speak out because he's had enough's enough, Steve, yeah?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So, Steve, give us a little bit of an Actually, Graham, do you want to quickly introduce Steve and confirm? Is he serving RAF, Steve? Great.
Yes, so Justice for Troops was approached yesterday by this gentleman, Steve, requesting some help, ideas, support, and we're engaged since then.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, when we get told that we haven't got problems, I want you to listen now to these two individuals. One's serving, one's been left on a pile, on a heap, and just everybody's walked away. This is wrong. All right, Steve, do you want to quickly give us an overview of your situation and where you are at the moment and the effect it's had on you?
Joined up many moons ago. Done a pensionable service, shall we say. And 2 years ago, 10 days before Christmas, my ex asked me to leave the house with 2 young kids. So I had to move into the mess 10 days before Christmas. I had to say to my children, I had to tell my children that I was broken.
Okay, mate.
And that I had to go away and get fixed.
Yeah. Breathe into it, man.
That really hurt my children and hurt me. I went from being a daily father to right now I barely see them.
So
I get the me and my ex on together anymore, and I'm happy of the person I am without her. The fact that what really hurts is that I don't see my children as much as I want. My children have changed. They're not the babies that I brought into this world and looked after.
Yeah, understand that, Steve. Understand, mate.
But now it's got to the point where I have the minimal amount of time with my children because of lies in the courtroom given by my ex. She's involved child services 3 times now. Every time it comes back with, you're doing nothing wrong. I've done parenting courses to prove myself to the system that I am not what the lies are she says I am. And it's got to the point where I'm going to have just enough money every month to fuel my car to get to work and back again.
So that alienation, because that's what usually happens, it gets bitter. And then when CMS get involved, that's even worse. So correct me if I'm wrong, you did have custody of the kids on shared custody, if I'm correct.
That's correct. Initially, due to the ex's working pattern, I was actually seeing my kids 4 days of the week to let her work. She then changed that because she wanted a more structure for the children. So in the February of last year, we signed a genuine 50-50 shared care order. Though to keep my kids in a decent lifestyle, I agreed, and we both agreed, that I would pay her £200 a month just to keep her ticking over and the kids happy. No sooner than the end of March, after I'd entered a new relationship, did she withhold the children on her apparent safeguarding grounds, and then I didn't see my children for 5 months.
How was that? How was that on your mental health, buddy?
It was the beginning of lockdown and everything, and it did drive me to the bottle. I'd be an absolute liar if I said it didn't.
to avoid your emotions?
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right, mate. We all do it. All right, you're in a good place here with us. All right. So thank you for sharing that, because Justine, you heard Justine's story, Steve. There.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What do you think of that, mate?
Lack of accountability by the military. It seems it's painful.
But Steve, what I'm going to say now is, Justine, what do you think of Steve's story, babes?
It's hellish. Like I was just saying to Graham there, just going through that enough is absolutely hellish in itself, let alone the areas that you should be getting support from are the people that are actually burdening you and making the process more difficult.
So here we go, Steve. I'm going to ask you a quick question. You know what questions come in, I think, because you know how I do this now, especially because I asked Justine earlier. Have you contemplated taking your life?
Yeah, and that was the lowest moment of my life.
Yeah.
Driving to see a friend who'd reached out to help me, but he lived the other side of the GNER line, and it did cross my mind.
So,
and
Steve,
that was enough for me.
Where are you now today, Steve? Because I know you've got fictitious arrears put on your CMS account. How much is it?
£7,000.
Craig, does that figure sound
very familiar? Yeah, absolutely. This is a very regular occurrence. £7,000, and £9,000, £12,000, £15,000. Where they come from? Have you any idea where these arrears come from?
Well, I proved to them that I had a 50-50 shared care agreement, and their initial comeback was, this case will be closed. That seems to have gone by the wayside. I've proven the order that I have, the 50-50 shared care. I've proven that she is in breach of the order. It's taken me over 12 months to get the order enforced, and I'm still waiting to go back to court for the enforcement.
And there's no repercussions from her for breaching a court order, is there?
Absolutely nothing. The same court that granted her the court order granted her a no-notice, non-molestation order, because I tried to drop a letter off to my children, attempt indirect contact, which resulted in me spending 5 hours in a jail cell the day before I was meant to fly on a military aircraft.
Before you were going out on an aircraft?
Yep, the day before I was due to fly a mission, I spent 5 hours in a jail cell.
Wow.
Graham, what's your thoughts on that, Greg?
Quite normal for pilots, actually. Because I've been out on the pop all night.
yeah.
What worries me here, bear in mind, there's a couple of things that worry me, really. This sounds arrogant, it's not meant to be, but having been a station commander, where I'd want to know about these issues that impact on our people, I was mostly oblivious to that reality because people weren't telling me. So I made time to get out and about into the crew rooms and became really annoying to some people because I was determined to find out what was really going on relative to what I was being told. Intuitively thinking, you can sense, actually, I'm being told a pup here, and my job is to actually intervene before it gets to that point, not become part of the problem. So to me, there's an institutional blindness at command level that isn't necessarily aware of this reality, but needs to know. And secondly, more strategically, without being judgmental here at all, but when our government, as a national position, our parliament, has a declared declaration of a sacred and unbreakable duty of care that is owed to Steve and Justine and you two and everyone else, several million. When we say that, I'm afraid I expect the nation to deliver that. Not short of it. There is no quarter given when you say that. You set an expectation and you have to deliver to it. And just to put that in context, as much as some people will criticise ministers, I'd recommend you listen to the Defence Select Committee today with a submission from Johnny Mercer as the last minister until he resigned or whatever happened there.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because it becomes apparent that there are elements in our government, unelected, with no authority, who are the blockers to people like Justine and people like Steve and people like you two getting these issues sorted that are actually easy to sort, but they're not getting sorted. And that's why you get anger, and that's why you get frustration in the veteran sector, and that's why people give up. And that's why I applaud the work that you're doing, because it raises attention. And the one thing that Steve said there is exactly what Johnny Mercer said tonight. He talks of accountability and the lack of accountability. Well, if the minister is talking about that, what hope has Steve got? What hope has Justine got? The minister can't get it.
And that's the biggest thing, because Steve, can I ask you a quick question, Steve? Because I've got to play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Have you reached out and told anybody in your company command what's going on? Have you had any support of anybody for this?
You know what? My immediate chain of command and my friends network have been second to none. They were very good when I was in a dark place, and they did turn around and say, go away and come back when you can come back. And they did. It was almost 12 months of me being a skeleton around. They were worried. I stopped eating for about 4 months. And they were worried about me. So my immediate chain of command were absolutely outstanding. When I did reach out to the wider community for help, it was very much, how much are you drinking? Are you going to kill yourself? That was the two questions posed every time I did reach out. And then I've reached out more recently after being fully discharged from any kind of mental health. I was never on any medication or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I reached out for counselling through the Benevolent Fund. However, it was looked on the same as me approaching for mental health. So I had to refuse the counselling service because it would have grounded me. And I
grounded you.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest.
Yeah, there's a bit of a stigma attached to it.
There is a massive stigma. The most powerfulest words in the world, mental health. All right, because it's seen as a weakness, but everybody suffers it. And this is really what gets me going now. Because, Steve, I'm going to hold you there. Justine, tell me about your caseworker. Tell me about the Royal Benevolent Fund, which Steve is having which Steve's had the problems as well there. Tell me how they dealt with you, please. Are they supporting you?
Well, the fact of the matter was that they didn't deal with me. There was no handover whatsoever. That the individual who would have gave the thumbs up to medically discharge me, who's now the head of the Benevolent Fund, that's aware of the process, didn't hand over any duty of care when I was discharged on crutches, and yeah, it was just radio silence. Like I just suddenly didn't exist to them, and then when we did reach out to them, this is probably following on about 2.5, 3 years afterwards. They ignored our request for about 9 months. And then any area of help they've attempted to give has never had really any follow through, and it's always, well, let alone now it's too late.
And Justine, just out of interest, with our support, if it has been supportive. Justine's written very eloquently to the head of the trustees of the RAF Benevolent Fund.
Yeah.
How was that experience?
There's nothing, just nothing ever comes from it.
So she's written to the controller, a recently retired Air Vice Marshal who was head of people for the RAF. She's written to the head of welfare and policy. How's that experience been?
I went to the head of welfare with a, quite a disturbing welfare issue, and they didn't respond for a good 2 weeks. And if you look at other agencies like the Samaritans and stuff, if they took that approach, what would happen? And it's a similar sort of outcome that they're gonna do by not offering support to people that are entitled to this.
This is your charity, your own RAF family.
Yeah,
RAF
was basically just told, don't write in again, and when you do, don't expect a response.
What? So
that was the latest. That was the latest email we got for Justine.
So this is the RAF.
Stop bothering us.
This is the RAF Benevolent. This is the RAF Benevolent Fund, which is just shut its actual retreat, this centres, and sold them off during COVID. Graham, this is the same Benevolent Fund which have had financing.
The reason why, just to give you the context, we didn't intend to hijack your session this evening. Justine and I arranged to speak because we have a sort of duty of care concern about just giving as much hugs as we can on regularly, checking in, because we see what's going on around the periphery. What I wanted to do tonight with Justine was work out, again, we go back to the first question we ever asked her: what do you want to do? What do you need? And what do you want? And Justine, very impressively, for a young person who's wiser than her years, she was very determined on the early days when we met her. She was very determined to try and make sure that this experience is capitalized on, so it doesn't happen again, so it stops happening again. That's a person who tells me she has purpose. This evening, the conversation was, okay, so given what the RAF Benevolent Fund have just told you, which is effectively is push off and stop bothering us, where do you want to go with that? Because you could do that, you can give up, because it's exhausting, it's tiring. She has other challenges that attack her capacity. But I don't get the impression you want to do that.
No, absolutely not. And I think it speaks volumes in itself when you've gone through the levels of raising an issue that's just being continued brushed under the rug, and then you go the head of welfare with a welfare issue, and then it starts to make sense. This is a systemic issue, and you look at my situation and Steve's situation. This is a widespread issue. It's not a singular to a medical neighborhood. It's widespread.
But very, very impressively, though, to me, could I just ask Justine a couple of questions, Fester?
Yeah, carry on.
With this experience, who have you written to, citing your evidence? Who have you written to?
My MP.
And what about in Parliament?
The Defence Select Committee.
How many times?
Who's your MP, by the way?
Drew Henry.
Drew Henry.
Well,
okay.
this is interesting. We got involved in this. Justine's first MP was Douglas Ross, the Conservative leader in Scotland, which is where we are. No engagement whatsoever. Nothing. Justine's second MP, because she's moved recently, Drew Henry, SNP, Inverness, immediate response. And immediately offering, let me write to the Secretary of State about this. And that is what we expect of our elected body. That is the standard. What concerned me about Justine is, and very impressively, she managed to find the time to write very eloquently about this and submit that evidence to Parliament for a duty of care inquiry that the Select Committee were undertaking. That led to Parliament then setting up the Women in Defence inquiry that's live now, which Justine submitted evidence to again. And that inquiry, I'm told, is the most successful parliamentary inquiry ever in parliamentary history, which we should be ashamed about because it's not good evidence. And that evidence, which reports in 4 weeks, will show this issue at scale. It won't be exclusive to women. It was largely used because we thought that will allow us to get the wider narrative into the public domain. And this, it will be a shocking example of how the organisation that we've been part of, our chain of command that I've been part of, it deliberately doesn't do the right thing. It does all it can to be seen to be not doing the wrong thing. There's a subtle but very significant difference there. That is not what service is about. That is not what our values are about. And that's not what we fought for at all. And that's why Mercer's resigned. It's that dereliction of what we said we'd do to what we do. It couldn't be further from the truth. So that's an example of someone aged 22 having strategic influence because she's bothered, which is great. Good for you.
Graham, can you just go over the Queen's speech of 1992 again, please?
Sorry, just say again.
The Queen's speech from 1992.
Yeah, well, off memory, so forgive me if it's not precise, but she effectively said criticism is good for any organisation and any institution. She went on to say no institution, nothing, should be beyond the ability to receive criticism, not just from those who have been loyal to it, but from those who have not. She went on to say that you can be just as effective if you're polite and with a bit of humour about your criticism rather than just ranting. But she said that Justine, in the way that she's been saying this is wrong, it's a very powerful engine for change. And that's the Queen saying that's what it should be. So I find it astonishing that Her Majesty's Armed Forces and our leaders and her ministers are not doing what Her Majesty said.
And this is the thing that scares me. Steve, are you there, buddy? This is the thing that scares me. Steve, so straight away, mate, you can see, how Justine and yourself have been led down by the RAF Benevolent Fund, which you actually pay into. You do pay into it. It's part of your wages. I'm sure they take out of your wages. So the big thing is, Steve, you've got the stigma of you feel you can't speak out because you'll be taken off mission straight away. However, I'm going to ask you a question here, Steve.
And I've got some questions too.
Are you alone on this, or is there others suffering, Steve, by any chance? Because don't tell me you're just the only one.
No, it does seem widespread. Once I did put my head above the parapet in work and spoke about my issues, that's when the common good seemed to occur, and other people who were going through the same issues with the CMS came to the surface and started to let me know their story. It was even the other night I reached out on Facebook for the first time in 18 months. I've been on a site and I'd never posted anything, and it transpired that a very good friend of mine who I've known for years is going through the same drama. We'd never spoke, we never knew about it, but he's in the same mire that I'm in, where when I joined up as a recruit many years ago, I am worse off every month now than when I first joined after a full pensionable service every month.
Steve, I'd like to ask you something. Is how has this, you can't really talk about what you do, but how is it what's the impact it has on your performance at work?
it's made me move away from the front line.
Right.
I can't fly on the aircraft that I fly routinely anymore. To get me time, more structured time that I do have with my children, so I can no longer fly as what I'm paid for, and I think the final straw for me personally was when I had to take myself away on the aircraft and sit in an area where I couldn't be seen and cry.
Oh.
And
Graham.
Yeah.
Graham, Steve, I'm going to ask you a question here because Graham, I don't know if you know Graham's story. Graham had a navigator. They were going out on a mission and he had to cancel the mission.
It was an operational sortie.
Operational sortie. And a couple of months later, the individual was found in a church in the Falklands, covered in blood. And Graham, your point at that point was that it seemed that the brotherhood we stepped in, because he didn't fit in, he was an outside, we outcast him. That's what you said, weren't it, Graham?
Yeah, it's really interesting, this. Again, I'm not blaming anyone. It's an observation, peculiar to what I call a high performance team, which the military wants to be, and often is. We don't sometimes help ourselves when we have badges, and we have identities, and we have a sense of belonging, and we recruit for team and a sense of belonging. Suddenly, when someone, for whatever reason it might be, doesn't quite fit what that team identifies to as the person that it belongs to, we almost isolate them to protect ourselves, to protect the integrity of the team, almost because unit cohesion is very important to the warfighting need. Someone who we see who might be a risk to our ability to do that, we don't want to be part of the team anymore. It's actually the worst thing you can do.
And Steve, did you feel like that at any time? You were taken out, you're not part of that team anymore, and you just set aside, you took yourself out of, does that correspond with you any way, what we just talked about?
You know what? No, not for. I'd be incorrect if I was to say that. The guys were very good. They did ask me if I needed to be moved away from the front line, so it was very much my need.
Good.
In the workplace, they were very, very good. I'd say there is more of a stay toward mental health nowadays.
Yeah.
But there's nothing set in stone. It's very much personality driven. So because they were looking out for me, they knew me. If I was brand new, they wouldn't know my personality and they wouldn't know the traits which I was then not showing anymore. Because they seen me go into myself and the rapid weight loss, that's when they realised something was up, and they did have my back. They did cover me off.
So the family come together.
And this is as a result of the child maintenance service, right?
Yeah, completely. I think it's because I've got a military brain, because I've been in so long, that if you do see wrongdoing or incorrect procedure in the military, it's immediately flagged to a degree and stamped on. I go back to the old days of, I used to be an engineer many years ago, so I go back to, if you messed up, that was the end of your career, because there was accountability.
Yeah.
There's nothing here though. No accountability here.
I did all the relevant documentation. I've provided everything on time and within reason. I've given them as much evidence as they require, but it just feels that I am to be taken to the cleaners every month.
Clive, let me just back on here, mate. You see, the thing is, what happens here is we have the CMS present a deductions of earnings request.
Yeah.
and the MOD, they just give it regardless. It's like a DU. You know, the employers have to. Where's he gone? The employers have to oblige this DER, regardless if the arrears are fictitious or not. But there's a simple way of stopping this. And, you know, the MOD, we should, like Boris was saying the other day there, Clive, remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Prove the arrears, or prove that these arrears are owed, and then we will set up this detachment of earnings request. You can't just come in and garnish people's salary, especially when you're on active service and stuff like that, which is going to cause an issue.
I've turned around and said to them that she's in breach of an order.
Yeah.
That makes no difference to them.
Yeah, I know. I've said you're in breach of the order, so therefore all these fictitious arrears go away. She stated that I've paid her absolutely nothing, where I've proved to them that money has transferred from my bank account to her bank account. At no point have they asked her for evidence of input to her account. Every week I pay for my daughter's bus fare because she has to pay to go to school. None of that's taken into account. So I've reached out and I've said to the ex, look, can we set up a payment? But all she is geared around is...
Lost him. Steve, are you there? Don't know what happened there, Steve. You have to click out and come back.
Whilst we're waiting for Steve, shall I add it?
Yeah.
What Steve's case just reminds me of. What Steve's case reminds me of is, again, try not to judge anyone or anything, but these are natural challenges in life that affect many people.
Yeah.
What's unique, though, is this is in the armed forces, which is a unique organization that has uniquely no independent representative body to protect nor support nor federate these issues cross-government beyond defence. It doesn't exist. We don't have a union. We don't have an independent representative body. We don't have anyone you can go to. You can only go to the chain of command. They have their own challenges for all sorts of reasons. But it must be fundamentally wrong where someone as capable and able as Steve has to go on social media, on Facebook, to find you, Craig, who then finds me, and within 24 hours, we hook up Steve to the Independent Defence Authority, who are very interested in this because they see the theme at scale. We've now hooked up the Chief Executive of the Families Federations, because these are big issues.
Yeah.
And what infuriates me personally, in Justine's case, but pretty much in all the cases that are before us, it's really difficult now to address what is a symptom of a problem, because it requires a lot of resource and a lot of management effort and a lot of time just to understand it. It would be far better to go upstream and prevent these things happening in the first place.
Yes.
Because the impact will be much lesser. And if an independent body existed, when Steve became aware that this doesn't sound right, you could remove the pressure on Steve. You could fire in that body to immediately speak to the chief executive of that organization and say, we need a conversation. We really need that conversation. And by the way, we're quite powerful. And if you don't have that conversation, we will sort out your budget and your challenge and your governance. And just as Johnny Mercer said today, it was a classic quote. Bear in mind, this is the minister a week ago, is now submitting evidence to Parliament. Quote, I'm going to make as uncomfortable as possible for the government, which I have to do in order to achieve anything. And that is telling you something, isn't it? I'm going to make it as uncomfortable as possible. That unfortunately, sometimes you have to do that in life. We're going to make it as uncomfortable as possible for these people, not judging them, so they're aware, alert, and they start developing mechanisms that stop killing people. It shouldn't be the case that Steve does that on his own. It shouldn't be the case he goes onto social media for help. It should be done on his behalf because the nation owes him a duty of care that's unbreakable. That's what we're saying. We need to start doing it, or you lose trust. People won't join. Justine, as someone who's relatable, I can't imagine Justine is going to be telling her mates to join the Royal Air Force at the moment.
Justine, do me a favour. Justine, do me a favour. Stand up for me for a minute from the camera. Let people see, actually, because you're sitting there and they can't see the damage. I want you to stand up. Great. I want you to show the damage they've created to a young woman. Don't forget, this young woman is a young woman in her prime. And look at that now. Ladies and gentlemen, please take that in. You've got a young woman there on crutches. And we haven't given, right, under the Health and Safety Work Act 1974, we have a moral duty and we have a financial duty, economic duty, and we have a legal duty to ensure our employees, and that's what they are, their employees are looked after. The Crown immunity was removed from the armed forces, so we have a duty of care. Where is the duty of care to Steve, to Justine, and everybody else? Because we have many. We have people serving in the special forces who are more frightened of our government.
No, they're more frightened of the CMS.
CMS are government. So they're more frightened in a government department than they are of the people they pursue. We keep asking.
May I just add there, Fester? I'm sorry.
Yes.
So ordinarily, before I fly on a military mission, I'll get a decent night's sleep. I raised this with Craig the other night. And this is probably one of the biggest kicks in the nuts for me as a serving person, that the CMS send out emails at around about 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock when they seem to close their server.
The nudge team.
If I'm trying to sleep before a mission or whatever, I will then try and log on to my portal to check the nearest outcome of what's occurred. And the portal is always down. So then it does impact the whole of the next day, or it will impact the mission if I'm arriving for work at stupid o'clock in the morning, that I can't log on to the server. And it can be something as simple as your message has been receipted, your claim has been inputted, but the messages they deliver are at 10 and 11 at night when you're trying to close down, when you're trying to self-heal, when you're trying to meditate, when you're trying to close off from the world. And that is the biggest. Every time I get a brown letter through my letterbox, instantly I feel the chest. I feel the anxiety grow, and it's horrible.
And this is where I get annoyed, Craig, because they're serving personnel and they should be an independent body there. Go on, Graham.
Exactly.
Steve said something there that I smiled at Justy. Steve effectively says, when a brown envelope comes in, it almost triggers a trauma. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's before you open it. How do you feel when you get these letters from Vets UK?
Oh, it's always the dreaded brown envelope.
It's torturous. That is an example of the system being exercised by public servants who owe these people a duty of care. Isn't that amazing?
Graham,
can we just talk about public servants there, Graham? You know about the Nolan principles, don't you?
I know about them. You might know a gentleman called Lord Evans, who delivered a lecture back end of last year called the K Lecture. And he talks about what he calls the post-Nolan era.
Yeah,
the United Kingdom. We now live in a country that has allowed those Nolan principles of integrity, transparency, doing the right thing. We've allowed those to slip over time, so that no one does the right thing. We just pretend that we want to make sure we're not seen to do the wrong thing, which is different.
Yeah.
And that,
the thing is,
that really is wrapped around all of this, is for various reasons, very complex reasons. Unless we recover that, the ethical question is, why are we in uniform and what are we defending then? Because that's not the identity of the country that we respect or want for. And if you look at France at the moment, there is an element of their senior military that is actually suggesting it's time for a coup to recover this identity of France as we expect it to be, which is not the direction of travel that it's going down. I just put that just shows a sense of anger and a sense of betrayal, which shows that the world is pretty unstable at the moment. All the more reason why you need a strong institution called your armed forces, which looks after its people.
And what you were saying there, Graham, is the Nullen principles. Those are embedded in the Civil Service Code, the Ministerial Code, and the Cabinet Manual, and they're just been overridden. These people in office are just not interested at all.
But remember, Craig,
but you're right. Hey, what?
Remember one thing. The Cabinet Office has got the rapid reaction team within the Cabinet Office, which deals with social media. Then they got a nudge, which is a science behaviour, behaviour science, which they work on people's behaviour. So they send you a brown envelope out on a Friday or a Thursday, so you will
and the text as well, and the text. Remember the text as well.
The text, yeah. So the way they do it is it's a mind war. And it's a mind war they play. Because here we go. This is for Steve and Justine.
Warfare on the public.
Yeah, but this is for Steve and Justine. And tell me if I'm correct. All right, tell me if I'm wrong. Brown envelope comes through the door. First thing you think is, oh my God, what's going on? And you get that in a conversation in your mind. Oh, here we go. Yet again, that's CMS or that's and then all of a sudden you get this in the conversation coming at you. And you actually pick it up and you put it off to the side because you don't want to touch it because you know already. But all of a sudden your mind's going 100 miles an hour now, thinking of the worst, and it drives you down and you push the letter away. And that's what happens because that's modern mind warfare. They're using the thoughts. The thoughts create the emotions start building up, and then you avoid it. Everybody. I say to a lot of people, we do a lot of avoiding today. We've been asked not to talk out about suicides anymore. And a lot of people are trying to avoid it and what I'm saying is, to bring change, we need to take all this head on and we need to speak about it. We need to put it out there. We need to put the Justines out there. We need to put the CMS Steves out there. We need to put everything out there. We need to stand up and actually say, look, this is what's going on. Let's stop avoiding it. It's a taboo. Everything's becoming taboo. We don't want to talk about it. But unfortunately, I got a lady here, a young lady. She shouldn't be in that state. All right, and that's really. And then I got a gentleman who's serving in the MOD, in the RAF, Royal Air Force, and just. Struggling.
This is actually, Clive, the thing is the role he does. You know, this, as we were saying to Graham, it's well, Graham has said it as well on our last podcast, is that it's tarnishing the operational effectiveness, and it is a threat to national security.
Well,
it is when you extrapolate it,
and it causes retention issues and recruitment issues as well. Who wants to join the Air Force or the Army or the MOD when you're going to get shat on and not looked after?
This is exactly why we set up the Independent Defence Authority, because we can prove it's work we're doing right now today with the executives. We can prove that if you created that in legislation right now and the opportunity with Parliament exists, you would immediately deliver better operational gain. You would immediately deliver better financial gain. Bear in mind that's public money. You'd immediately deliver better people gain because you'd address and ease the retention and recruitment challenges. And importantly, you turn the reputational issue around in a heartbeat from an organisation that perceived or in reality no longer cares to one that actually does, because it's invested in that independent representative body. That's the evidence that we've got that is with Parliament now. But I would encourage you to just wrap all of that up. Do find the time to listen to Johnny Mercer briefing the Defence Select Committee today, because it's a fascinating insight of a raw reality that we should be alert to. Because if you want to do something about this, if you want to purposefully galvanise people to a common objective, you will need to understand the challenges ahead of you when you do that. And Johnny Mercer is probably the most knowledgeable person, I guess, on the planet about the challenges that lie ahead here. We might disagree in what he does and what he says, but in terms of his knowledge, I second to none. So I would encourage you to have a look at the problems he found in delivering to the Office of Veterans Affairs. Just have a listen to the problems he had. It's astonishing.
Actually, Graham, I tell you what, and what's annoying me is the Royal British Legion was formed in 15th of May 1921. It's coming up to 100 years now, this next week. And they were formed after, as you know yourself, after World War I, to give a voice to the ex-service personnel. And what really annoys me today, and I said it on the weekend, was 100 years later, we've just opened the Office of Veterans Affairs. British Legion is now got so much money is sitting on investment funds, and that what he was performed for, we're now opening Office of Veterans Affairs, and it's a cabinet office. It's in the actual cabinet office. And they just duplicating what the Royal British Legion done 100 years ago. But Royal British Legion have lost its path over the years. And we're just trying, and that's all they've done is duplicated, but they've duplicated, they really watered down. And as you said, independent body, because Steve.
Hey guys.
If I had a magic wand, I'm going to use, I only wrote down two of Graham's words, but I'm going to get them questions written down, because what do you need and what do you want? And what's the last one, Craig? Great. If I had a magic wand, what do you need, Steve? What do you need now?
I think it's the same as Justine, but I want accountability from the CMS to see what they do to people. Just what Graham was saying there, to recount a decent story that I had from the mental health services within the military. The first week I did attend, when I had problems, my nurse said the things I was presented with at the direction of my former partner of I needed to have anger management, and I needed to have looking in to see whether I was bipolar. She'd seen these flags many times before, and she gave me this warning 2 years ago that this is the first step of you losing your children. If there was some sort of go-between between that military organisation and the CMS to say this was raised very early doors, that his ex is going to go for the children by, as he is on the bones of his arse, and he can't cope right now because I was in a marriage breakdown, I was kicked out just before Christmas. If she could have spoke to the CMS and said, we think she's going to go for the kids, then 2 years down the line when she has gone for the kids, and I have a full CMS claim saying that I never see my daughter and I see my son 12 nights a year, hence the figures they've come out with, that would vastly help. That the notes taken by the military could then be given to the CMS to say, we had an idea she was going to do this 2 years ago.
Graham, do you want to come in there? I understand. Thank you for that share, Steve.
There's an important point there on what Steve says there. When we talk about creating an independent defence authority, that's not just a name. and then that's job done. What's critical here is that you populate it with people who know what they're on about. That's critical, or it'll be a mission fail. So if, for example, Steve, if I wanted someone to shape policy on how government departments communicate better together, I would have Steve write that policy. I would then have Steve deliver that policy with people like you, Craig, and the rest of the gang, because you know what you're on about. That's critical. If I want to talk about how do we improve mental well-being and medical care in phase 1 training, I'd have Justine doing that. Because what we're saying there is these characters, you've not just got a lived experience, which you didn't invite, but you've got it, I'm afraid. What you're managing to do, and you should take credit in this, it's very impressive, because not many can do it. You're converting that lived experience into a learned experience. And the learned experience can then be applied in better delivery of defence output, including the national need, which is to deliver on that sacred promise. So Johnny Mercer made that point today. If you do create, we're talking about an independent authority. That's being debated in Parliament right now. We've got to that point. But he made the point, you don't just want to create what you can imagine would be an organisation with people who, it sounds good, but they haven't got a clue what they're doing. That would be a disaster, an absolute disaster. You don't want that. So you've got to be really careful in how you implement it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes absolutely 100% sense, because creating something and then putting, we'll train some officers on a course and then we put them in and they haven't got that life experience. That would absolutely fail straight away. And Steve, I've got to come back to you.
Yeah, go on.
Bipolar. Do you want me to tell you? Everybody suffers depression. All right, depression's moods. We have minor moods. We have severe moods. All right, and everybody suffers depression. Depression is loss of interest, loss of energy, loss of appetite. All right, it's that moment where you go, I've had enough. But you go to the doctors and you tell him, I've had enough. And what they do, they go, pharmaceuticals. We'll give you tablets. All right, that's what they do. Here we go, bipolar. A lot of people will have a go at me about this. Bipolar is a bit more manic depression. So on the 15th of December, you left the home. You didn't have your kids. Right, 3 biggest stresses in life. Life stresses create. That's what mental health is. So money, relationships, change. And I tell you now, the 3 biggest things there, your relationship failed, your kids lost your kids, so you got a big change. That's grief. That's grief you got. And I'm going to tell you something. Resentment. Resentment is the toxic you drink when you have been hard, when you feel you've been hurt. Somebody in your family or somebody has hurt you. Could have been words, could have been physical, could have been mentally. All right. What you do, you go, have you ever sat back and gone, I hate her. I'll get her back. And add that.
And because that would play to her facade of what she's stating I am. So no, I don't. But
what I'm saying is, in your mind. In your mind, it's like drinking toxic. You're inside. You're so angry, and the anger is enraged. All right, and I'll tell you why I know, because Graham and Craig knows about a lady who I helped. Go on, Justine.
No, I was just thinking that the thing that links all of these situations together is that there is preventative measures that can be put in place that aren't. Like, a lot of these situations can be prevented, but it's almost like they're fueled, and all of this is a byproduct and a symptom of what could have been prevented.
Yeah.
Just add on that there's a reason why there isn't a prevent strategy, is because an awful lot of people financially are rewarded by what we call picking people up out of the river downstream.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a business there. It's almost as if, and we talked about it earlier, didn't we? It's almost as if some of these military charities, and to some extent the government, are commercializing the vulnerable who happen to be veterans. They make a lot of money out of it. A lot of public money goes into donations, benevolent stuff, but it's not actually making a jot of difference to preventing it in future. It's just soaking up and absorbing the problem downstream where people are ruined. You've got to go way upstream before, and that's why it requires a strategy, and that's why it requires an independent body populated by people like you guys who know what you're on about. You need that strategy.
Yeah,
Graham,
just exploit people.
guys, sorry, Justine, I'm sorry. When we're going about suicides and stuff like that, are you aware that every suicide costs the taxpayer £1.7 million?
Every loss.
Every
No,
suicide.
I'd never knew that.
So that is actually what we have. What we have there is like a micro economy, if you look at it that way, because the coroners and all in the mental health side of things, and it's just they're all being fed by that.
Well, I'm sure the CMS profits can pay for that.
Oh, they do. I'm sure they do. CMS
Just to
or
give a rough figure to Justine out there, that the figure that the CMS are asking me to pay is more than my mortgage every month.
How much? Here's a quick question for you, Steve. How much are they leaving you with?
£200
a month. All right.
Yeah.
And don't forget now.
that's £50 a week to have a thing to live on, and you're doing your bit.
No.
You're doing your bit for your country, and you're expected to have £50 a week.
I've said to the ex that unfortunately, like, things like Christmas and birthdays, even just getting my kids little niceties, I'll only have enough fuel to get the kids each week and pick them up. That's it.
That's less than the government's statutory sick pay, like, to put that into perspective.
But they have a minimum wage as well, don't they? But the government agency is having me less than minimum wage when I'm meant to be a fully serving member of the Royal Air Force, flying a military aircraft.
And you've got to pay for your food these days because it's not free anymore in the military. So
luckily, when I fly,
it was
I get my food
never
for free.
free.
So
wait, Craig. Go on. What was that site, Steve?
luckily, when I fly, I do get free food. So if I was on the front line, I'd be all right, and I'd get fed on the aircraft. But yeah, unfortunately, that's not the case.
So let's put that back quickly. Gavin Briggs was on £150, Craig, and he's no longer with us. So I tell you what, Steve, I'll hold my hat off to you. And look, we need to sort something out here. Graham, go on, buddy.
Okay. Yeah, there's a number of what I call costs to this. There's the human cost. And it breaks my heart to hear what Steve's going through, and Justine and so many others. There's a human cost and there's a financial cost. And we also get involved in work disputes. So service complaints is really what set us off with the absurdity of that and the impact it has on the organisation. The figures that we've worked with, we've just gone to our execs today to help Parliament make the right decision on an informed basis rather than guess it, use the knowledge that we have. £30 billion a year, £30 billion a year is spent on workplace disputes. 30 billion quid. That's £1,000 per taxpayer for every employee. Which doesn't sound much, but I reckon there are people in this country who are struggling to find a tenner to feed the kids. Steve, that is an example of that inefficiency will make a big deal to easing the pain that most of the people in this country are enduring. That's why we set up, because what you're seeing here is it's a government failing to communicate cross departments. You wouldn't do it in your team. you would make sure that that person, like a football team, you'd make sure your left back was speaking to your left wing to make sure the ball is going in the right direction. You would do that in a team. Why can't you do that across government? Why can't you do that? And you see that in the foreign and Commonwealth veterans issues. What's going on there with the Home Office and the MOD? What's that about? It should be a 30-minute conversation to change the policy. It should be that easy. But speak to Johnny Mercer, how difficult it is.
Do you know,
it's
the
fascinating.
thing that winds me up about this is the fact that we have a Home Secretary, Priti Patel. She bullied people, and they paid from taxpayers' money £340,000 of our money, and yet we can't get.
Well, there's 340,000 reasons why the armed forces don't want an effective complaint policy right there.
Exactly.
So the
biggest thing, you know, that's why Justine's comment was very opposite. You'd be better off investing upstream to prevent it and give Steve a safe space to go to early to say, look, I just need someone to speak to that lot to tell them to back off. That's what you need.
There's no point to treat the symptoms when you can go to the root.
Yep.
Yeah. The root cause. And the root cause of a lot of things in the armed forces with mental health wise is the CSA, CMS, Child Maintenance Service now. They cause a lot of problems. They cause a lot of retention issues.
What I'm going to do here, Craig, because we are getting on, all right. Justine, will you come on again?
Yeah, of course. I'd love to. Thanks for having me.
Steve, would you come on again?
Yeah, of course I would, guys.
Because I tell you what, right, I'm going to bring this to an end because, independent, we need an independent authority body, definitely. We need to enshrine it with law. We need to have the teeth so we can keep accountability is massive. I agree 100%. You know, Steve should be allowed to do his job and somebody else it deflects everything and it goes to him.
Clive, the thing is, Steve should be allowed to do his job because his job is a matter of national security.
National security, definitely. And Steve, thank you very much for the share, mate, because I tell you what you've gone through, as a veteran, look, as a veteran of 12 years, I know how many years you've done. Look, I'm sorry, because you shouldn't go through this. All right, alienation. We should have an independent body who protects you, and you've signed to serve our Queen, our country, and serve the people in our country. Then people in the House of Commons, all right, can go to bed safe at night because of you and your commitment. So I'm sorry, all right. I'm sorry on their behalf, definitely. And same with you, Justine. I am sorry that I actually joined the British Army and the MOD and a lot of veterans were willing to sacrifice their life. And for us to have brothers and sisters who have gone through this and suffered, it hurts me. It absolutely hurts me. And I'm going to ask for people out there to come forward because we need to say enough is enough. We need to get Johnny Mercer. And I know I've called Johnny Mercer out, and Johnny Mercer's admitted to me on Saturday there's a big struggle. We've known there's been a big struggle, but we need to all come together and unite. I've been talking to people on the weekend, and enough's enough. We need to all come together. If anybody's in the dark space, all right, get hold of me. My number, I'll put my number up and I'll put my email up. Get hold of me because I've had enough of this. We need to do something. And if you can help us, get hold of me. I've had people reach out who are going to help us, and I'm going to talk to a couple of people. But that's where I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to leave Beefcake have a say, Graham have his say, and Steve and Justine have their say as well. But that's all I'm going to say because it pisses me off. I'm Sorry, but it's absolutely. Go on, buddy. I'm stuck with you.
From what I've been hearing tonight, and speaking with Steve, the guy is a very important part of the MOD. He's part of our He's actually part of our national security. This guy can't function properly, and so the government know what is happening here, and they're ignoring it. The likes of Theresa Coffey, the likes of the Prime Minister, they know this because we've been complaining about this for years. So, in my eyes, our government are committing treason against the country because they are actually putting our country at risk because they're putting our servicemen in a position where
it's negligence.
Interesting.
yes, it is. They know this is happening. This is treason. It's treason. It is treason without a doubt. I'm sorry, Graham, to bring you into this, but this is treason. It is. If you read treason, the text of treason, it's treason without a doubt.
Go on, Gray. Have a say, Gray.
Well, thanks for leaving us on such a high note. Great.
Well, I'm just speaking from a lawful term.
What I'd encourage you to do, and all the viewers and all your network, it's no good being industriously active unless you understand the strategic space that you're operating in.
Yeah.
The best way to understand it, in my view today, because it's fresh, is log on to the Defence Select Committee website. You'll see it on social media. Listen to Johnny Mercer talking for an hour on the strategic challenges that he had as your minister. Yeah. And then you'll understand the complexity, but it will help you work out a way to attack it. That's what I'd recommend you do. No words of nonsense from me. Just go and listen to what, and I think a lot of people who are critical of him, you'll be more forgiving of him when you hear some of the challenges he had.
Yeah, the thing is, Graham, we do not want to attack him. We want to help. We actually want to help the government. We actually want to help the government to provide a solution.
He feels he's been attacked. Just listen to him. Just listen to him. It's fascinating example of someone who clearly cares and is having some problems in delivering on it. It's really interesting for our national position at the moment. It's really interesting.
But Graham, here we go. I didn't want to say anything, but Johnny Mercer, I challenged him on the weekend. I spoke to him 3 times on the weekend. I tell you what, I take my hat off to the guy. All right? I take my hat off to him. All right? However, Johnny Mercer he's got this fear as well inside him, in his mind. Money, relationships, and change. And mental health affects everybody. And what I saw was, I would love to sit with Johnny and use the processes I've been taught to sort out what we tell ourselves there. So I can say, look, Johnny, look at this, the fear we've got. Fear doesn't turn out as we believe it's going to turn out 99% of the times. What we fear the most doesn't always turn out.
Clive, can you share his body language, please?
No, I can't. I'm not going to. We don't need to do that, Craig, because we know where we are with it. All right. He's got Johnny Mercer's. He's told me. He's promised me he'll get in touch with Ian Briggs. So let's just leave it at that for the time being. All right. Because I don't want to be attacking him all. You know, I've offered the olive branch. We've offered that olive branch again. We've offered it so many times.
And again.
Let's see. All right.
Listen to the evidence he gave today. I think everyone will find it really fascinating. All right.
Yeah, and that's what I'm going to do. Justine, go
on. There's one thing that's just stuck in my head from what Steve said about when he was going to get offered the counselling from the Benevolent Fund, and it was almost going to be used against him if he was going to go down that route. And that's really, really shocked me. That is a dangerous toxic path to go down. Like, because everybody has mental health and everybody would benefit from counselling. So how can somebody be denied that? Is really quite shocking.
And I think you're right there, Justine. That's a big thing, you know. That is big. Steve, do you want to come back on that?
It was essentially my personal pride that I didn't want to stop doing my primary role because of the stigma attached. It did hurt when they
You should have never been put in that position.
Yeah, I had to complete multiple questionnaires just to access the counselling service. So when I was alerted to how severe the military did view the counselling service, it forced me to go outside of the military to pay for my own version of that. But you know what? I'm glad that I did, because it opened up a new avenue that I didn't explore, which I don't think the military would have advised me to do. And it was very much self-healing, the power of now, enlightenment, and going down that route. And that's led me into reading more books than I thought I ever would do, to try and self-heal and get rid of the issues of the past and deal with the moment, as opposed to allowing the past to affect the future. So
Beautiful.
I'm glad that it did occur and that the military did put that stigma on it, because then I would never have accessed the individual that I did. And I do feel that that opened up the correct channel that I should have followed initially.
So you meditate now, Steve?
Meditate, do a lot of introspection, do a lot of reading, and do a lot of the techniques I was taught in the 2-hour session I was with a gentleman, to try and deal with everything which is going on.
Brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant, Stephen. And look, I believe in that as well. I meditate every night. I meditate in the morning. I do a lot of, some people say it's hairy-fairy. Let me tell you, it gets me by. And I live in the moment, and I live in gratitude. So, and that's where I am, you know. So that's brilliant to hear that, Stephen. And you're no different to some of the people we've got from the Special Forces who see the stigma and they go out and pay for their own as well, because the mental reliance doesn't work, you know. But that's where we are. Thank you all very much for coming on here. And I definitely want to bring you on again, because you're all amazing. And what I'm going to say to everybody out there, if you are suffering, you are having that black dog, look,
No way.
you can get through it. There's people on here who, Justine just give us a smile there. It was a beautiful smile that was, actually, especially when Steve was talking about meditation. What do you do, Justine? Do you meditate?
I love meditation. You should look up Wim Hof method. His breathing techniques are really powerful.
Definitely. Listen, meditation is the way forward.
Yes, it is. Clive,
So,
it is.
Steve, take care.
All right. Take care, Steve. All right, everybody, love you all, and bye from me, bully.
No, I'm going to say about the, we're going to about meditation and stuff like that. I went out to India.
Yeah.
And I've done the old meditation in the Kirpan Monastery.
Good man. We'll talk about that next. Craig, we're going to talk about that next time, because we're over. All right? And I'll speak to you later.
Ciao.